This story is called Walk Each Other Home. It's about an old woman, an old dog, and what happens when the world decides you're too old to love. At 78, you are a risk, Mrs. Mitchell. If something happens to you, the dog comes back. That sentence hit harder than anything a doctor ever told me. It was a cold, drizzly October afternoon. I sat on a hard plastic chair inside the county animal shelter, across from a young volunteer named Jake, scruffy beard, adopt don't shop t-shirt. He barely glanced at my application before pushing it aside. "I'm sorry," Jake said. "Not cruel, just matter of fact. We're talking about a 10 to 15-year commitment. Statistically, well, you get it." What he meant but wouldn't say. You are too old. You are expiring. Heat crept up my cheeks. 60 years of working, paying taxes, raising kids who now live in Denver and Portland and only remember my number at Christmas. All I wanted was a living soul to talk to, and I was being told I didn't qualify. "I understand," I whispered. My knees popped as I stood. I didn't leave right away. Instead, I took one last walk down the kennel hallway. The noise hit me like a wall. Young dogs throwing themselves against gates, barking, begging. Jake was right about them. Any one of those dogs would drag me face first into the pavement. I was just an old lady with arthritis in a house that was too quiet. Then I saw him. Last pin on the row. A pile of gray fur on a thin blanket, not even bothering to stand. The card on the cage read, Duke, 13 years old, shepherd mix, owner surrendered, heart condition, hospice adoption needed. Hospice adoption. A polite way of saying he was waiting to die. I got down on my knees, joints screaming. "Hey there, old man," I whispered. Duke lifted his head slow. His eyes were cloudy with cataracts, but when they found mine, he saw me, really saw me. He got to his feet, back legs shaking the same way my hands do. He pushed his gray muzzle against the bars and sighed. That was all it took. We understood each other. We were both leftovers, both deep in the autumn of our lives. I stood up, and something hard and certain moved through me, a strength I hadn't felt in years. I walked straight back to the front office. "Forget something, Mrs. Mitchell?" Jake asked. "I want Duke," I said. My voice didn't shake. Jake exhaled through his nose. "Ma'am, listen. Duke is 13. He's got arthritis, takes heart pills every day, and has accidents on the floor. Honestly, we don't think he'll see spring. You don't want that heartbreak." "That's exactly why I want him," I said. Jake looked confused. "You brought up statistics, young man," I said, leaning on his desk. "You're worried I'll die before the dog. But look at Duke. He doesn't need someone to throw a tennis ball or run laps at the park. He doesn't need someone planning 10 years ahead. He needs someone who knows what it's like when your bones ache in the rain, someone who walks slow, someone who already knows that life ends." Jake tried to cut in, but I wasn't finished. "You give young dogs to young families, right? And what happens when the dog gets old? When he turns into a burden? He winds up right back here. I took care of my husband until his very last breath. I'm not afraid of death, and I'm not afraid of vet bills. I'm only afraid of the silence." My voice cracked. "Don't give him to me so he lives forever. Give him to me so he doesn't spend his last days alone in a cold cage. We'll walk each other home. That's all I'm asking." The room went quiet. Jake looked at me, then down at Duke's file, the one that was headed for the hopeless pile. He picked up a pen and signed the release without a word. "He only eats wet food," Jake said, voice thick, eyes on the floor. "And the pills, you gotta wrap them in a piece of hot dog or cheese, or he'll spit them right out." "I always have cheese in the fridge," I smiled. When Jake handed me the leash, he squeezed my hand. "Take care of him, Dorothy." Our walk to the parking lot was slow. Wind cut through my coat, ruffled Duke's fur. He didn't pull. He shuffled beside me, matching my rhythm like he'd always known it. When I helped him into the back of my old Oldsmobile, he licked my wrist. Tonight, Duke is lying on the expensive Persian rug I used to keep spotless for company. I don't care about the rug anymore. He snores softly. Outside, fog rolls in across the yard, but in here, it's warm. People on Facebook call me a hero. They have it backwards. When I look into those cloudy eyes, I know the truth. Duke didn't need me to survive. He needed me so he could rest. And me? I learned that life doesn't quit mattering just because the sun is going down. We're just two old souls who decided the last stretch of road shouldn't be lonely. And when the time comes, for him or for me, neither of us will be alone. That's the best contract I ever signed. By sunrise, my little post had escaped. A neighbor shared it, then her cousin, then a complete stranger with a rescue page and bright, cheerful captions. By breakfast, my phone was buzzing like a trapped fly. "Hero," one message said. "Angel," said another. And then the other kind showed up, sharp and sure, like cruelty was a public service. This is selfish. Old people shouldn't adopt. You're just doing this for the attention. When you die, the shelter has to clean up your mess. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee going cold, reading strangers pick apart my life like it was a problem they could fix with one sentence. Duke slept under the table, pressed against my ankles like a space heater with a heartbeat. Every now and then he sighed, deep, content, achingly human. I looked at the comments again. They weren't really arguing about Duke. They were arguing about me. The doorbell rang at 8:30, startling us both. Duke's head came up slow. One ear twitched. He didn't bark. He just looked at me, like he was asking if the world had come to take him back. "It's okay," I whispered, though I wasn't sure. I opened the door to nobody. Just a package on the porch and a small note taped to the top in thick marker. "Don't get attached." My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on the stairs. I stared out at the quiet street. Wet pavement, bare trees, a sky the color of old concrete, and saw nothing unusual. But ordinary has teeth sometimes. I carried the package inside with shaking hands. Duke followed, nails clicking softly like a cautious metronome. Inside was nothing. An empty box. No return address, no explanation. Just that note. I sat down on the couch, the paper crumpled in my fist, and Duke pressed his heavy body against my shin like he could hold me in place. Then my phone rang. My daughter's name on the screen. Beth. 2 months since I'd heard her voice. I picked up on the second ring. "Mom," she said, and the way she said it already sounded like blame. "What is going on?" I looked at Duke's gray muzzle, at the way his breath moved his whiskers, at the way he read my tone, not my words. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean," she said, exhaling hard. "I'm getting messages. My coworkers are sending me your post. People are tagging me. They found my name. Did you know that?" A different kind of cold went through me, the kind a blanket can't fix. "No," I said. I didn't know. "Mom," Beth said, softer now, "why would you do this? Why would you put yourself out there like that?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the world is always shocked when an old woman becomes visible. "I didn't plan it," I said. "I just posted a picture." "People are saying you're irresponsible," she pressed. "That you're making the shelter liable. That you're—" "A risk," I finished, voice flat. "Yes, I've heard." Silence. Then she tried the practical angle, the one adult children use when they don't want to admit they're scared. "What if you fall?" she asked. "What if you get sick? What if he needs expensive care?" I looked at my hands. These hands bathed my husband when his body quit cooperating. These hands cooked meals I didn't feel like eating. These hands signed more paperwork than I can count. Mortgages, permission slips, hospital forms, funeral arrangements. "I might fall," I said. "I might get sick." True. "Mom!" "And he might die," I went on, throat tight. "So might I. So might you, Beth. None of us has a contract." Heavy silence on the line. Then she said the thing that landed harder than every comment combined. "I just don't want to have to fix this later." There it was. Not love. Not concern. A future chore. Already resented. I swallowed the ache like medicine. "You won't have to fix anything," I said. "That's not realistic," she shot back. "I live across the country." "I know," I said. "That was your choice." Another pause. Then her voice softened, and I heard what was really underneath. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared you're alone." I looked at Duke. He blinked at me slow, trusting, tired, here. "I was alone," I said. Yesterday. Beth didn't have an answer for that. We hung up politely, like strangers who share a last name but not daily life. When the screen went dark, the house felt too still. But then Duke got up with a groan that could have been my own body. He made his way to the back door, looked at me, and waited. No whining. No demanding. Just an invitation. So I pulled my coat off the hook and we went out into the wet morning together. The walk wasn't pretty. Duke's back legs wobbled. My knee complained at every step. Wet leaves made the sidewalk slick. Halfway down the block, Duke stopped and stared at a patch of grass like it held some kind of secret. He took his time, did what he needed to do. And when he turned back toward home, his tail gave the smallest wag, like he was proud he'd remembered how to be a dog. Inside, I wiped his paws with a towel. He sat there patient as an old man at a barber shop. Then came the pills. Jake had warned me about the pills. I tried cheese first. Duke took it delicate, chewed once, and spit the pill onto my slipper with perfect aim. I stared at it. Duke stared at me. First time I saw humor in those cloudy eyes. "Oh," I said, "so that's who you are." I tried again. Pill buried deeper, fingers smelling like food. Duke took it with a sigh, swallowed slow like he was doing me a favor, and something clicked in my chest. He wasn't helpless. He was compromising. Two old souls working out how to live together. By afternoon, the rain picked up, tapping the windows like impatient fingers. Duke napped near the heater, but not on the rug this time. He chose the worn blanket I'd pulled from the closet, the one my husband kept in the car for emergencies. I watched Duke settle into it like he was settling into a memory. My phone buzzed again. Message request from someone I didn't know. I almost swiped it away. But something, stubbornness maybe, made me open it. A woman named Renee. Profile picture, tired face, toddler on her hip. "Hi," she wrote. "I saw your story. I'm not trying to be rude. I just have to say this. I surrendered my dog last year because my landlord called pets damage risks. I cried 3 days straight. People called me a monster. None of them offered to help with rent." I stared at the screen. Then a second message. "People are yelling at you because it's easier than admitting the system is broken. They'd rather blame a grandmother than admit compassion is complicated." Compassion is complicated. That line sat in my chest like a warm stone. I thought about the comment section. Strangers shouting about responsibility and risk and burdens. And I thought about Renee, balancing a toddler and grief and rent all at the same time. The truth is, everyone has a reason, and the internet doesn't care. It just wants a villain. My phone rang again. Unfamiliar number. I answered carefully. Mrs. Mitchell? Professional voice, politely pleasant. Yes. This is Karen. I'm with the shelter, just calling to check in. My heart started hammering. Is something wrong? I asked. No, Karen said fast. Not exactly. We do a standard follow-up for hospice adoptions. A beat. And, she added quieter, we've gotten some calls from people who saw your post. Of course. Of course they called. Not to ask if Duke was okay. Not to offer help. To report me like a cracked sidewalk. What kind of calls? I asked, already knowing. Karen hesitated. Concerns, she said. About contingency plans. About what happens if you... If I die, I finished. Steady voice. Silence. Then Karen exhaled, soft, like she hated this part of her job. Yes, she said. I looked at Duke, chin on my husband's old blanket, sleeping like the world had finally stopped shouting. I have a plan, I said. We'll need it in writing, Karen said, apologetic. It's not personal, it's policy. It's always policy, I said, surprised at how calm I sounded. When it involves old people. Karen didn't argue. She just said, can I stop by tomorrow? 10 minutes, just to check the setup and go over the hospice agreement. I could have said no out of pride. Could have shut the door on all of it. But Duke had taught me something in one night. Dignity isn't loud. Dignity is consistent. Tomorrow's fine, I said. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. At the top, I wrote, Duke plan. Then I listed what I knew. My neighbor, Mrs. Coleman, had a kind heart and a fenced yard. My late husband's cousin lived 2 towns over and always loved dogs. The local senior center ran a volunteer program, people who could check in on me. And I had money put aside, not for vacations or fancy things, but for exactly this kind of ending. I wrote it all down. Names, numbers, steps. Not because the internet demanded it. Because Duke deserved to be safe, even after I wasn't around to defend myself. That night, the comment section got uglier. Someone reposted my picture under the headline, "This is why shelters should stop letting old people adopt." Thousands of likes. Thousands of opinions. Some defended me. Some mocked me. Some turned it into a debate about who deserves companionship. As if love was a prize. As if grief was a lesson you only learn once. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote back, "Not to fight. To tell the truth." I posted, "Yes, I'm 78. Yes, I'm a risk. So is every human who signs any promise. Duke isn't here because I think I can outrun time. He's here because I refuse to let time be cruel. If you think the end of life means you don't deserve love, then you're not afraid of my age. You're afraid of your own." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't insult anyone. I told the truth and let it stand there like a candle in the wind. Then I turned off my phone. I got down on the floor beside Duke's bed. His eyes opened slow when I touched his shoulder. Cloudy with cataracts, yes, but clear where it counted. "People are arguing about us," I whispered. Duke blinked, completely uninterested in the world's noise. He pushed his muzzle into my palm like a decision. So I lay down beside him, careful with my hip, careful with his ribs, and we listened to the rain. At some point, his breathing fell in with mine. Two old bodies agreeing, for one night, not to be afraid. Morning came, and Karen with it. She was younger than me, older than Jake, with tired eyes that had seen too many goodbyes. Duke didn't bark when she walked in, barely lifted his head. Karen crouched down slow, offered the back of her hand. "He's calm," she murmured, almost surprised. "He's exhausted," I said gently. "There's a difference." Karen gave a small, real smile. She looked around my living room. The blanket, the water ball, the soft lights, the little ramp I'd propped against the couch so Duke wouldn't have to jump. Then she looked at me, and her professional face slipped into something human. "I read the comments," she admitted. I didn't ask why. Of course she did. "I'm sorry," she said. "People act like love is a liability." I handed her the notebook. "My plan," I said. Karen read it quiet, eyes moving over names and phone numbers and steps in my careful handwriting. When she finished, she nodded once, like something tight inside her finally let go. "This is more than most people do," she said softly. "Most people assume they have time," I replied. Karen swallowed hard. She looked at Duke. "He was supposed to be a short stay," she said. "That's what we all thought." Duke shifted, like his name had drifted to him from far off. I reached down and scratched behind his ear. "Maybe it still will be," I said, "but it'll be a loved one." Karen stood up, blinking fast. She grabbed her clipboard like it could protect her. "I'll file this," she said. "And for what it's worth?" "Yes?" She paused, then said it. "I don't think you're the risk, Mrs. Mitchell." I waited. "I think the risk is what we've become," she said. "A world that panics when someone chooses tenderness without a guarantee." After she left, my house felt different. Not quieter, just settled. Duke followed me into the kitchen, sniffed the air, and sat down slow and careful, like a gentleman taking his usual chair. I opened a can of wet food. He ate like the meal mattered, like H.E. mattered. And watching him, I knew the real controversy was never about an old woman adopting an old dog. The real controversy was this. People will spend hours arguing about whether the lonely deserve comfort. But they won't spend 1 minute asking why so many of us are lonely in the first place. That evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Beth. "I booked a flight. I'll be there tomorrow." No emoji, no explanation, just that. I stared at the words until my vision blurred. Duke walked over and leaned against my leg, steady as a pillar. Outside, the sky went the color of wet steel. Inside, a dog with a failing heart and an old woman with aching knees waited, together, for whatever came next. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't dread the knock at the door. Because even if the whole world thought we were a bad idea, we were no longer alone. This next story is called The $18 Rule. It's about a cardboard box, a comment section, and the strange math of kindness. I didn't want applause. I wanted proof that sometimes the story isn't a scam, that sometimes it's exactly what it looks like: a mom, a broken car, and a too-cold apartment. So I hit post. At first, it was sweet. Friends left comments like, "This cracked my cynicism wide open," and "Now I'm crying in the produce aisle. Thanks." Hearts and crying face emojis piled up. I smiled, put the phone down, started making dinner. By the time the pasta water boiled, my notifications had gone haywire. Somebody shared it to a bigger community group. That share got shared again. My simple story tore through the digital neighborhood faster than gossip at a block party. By the time I had the kids tucked in, there were thousands of reactions. And then came the other kind. Must be nice having $18 to spare. I can barely keep food on the table. This is just bragging with extra steps. You did a nice thing. Why do you need the internet to clap for you? You're getting played. People make up sob stories all day long. Posts like this just encourage handouts. Everybody struggles. Toughen up. It felt like a punch to the chest. Not because people disagreed, but because of how fast a story about two moms and a box of hand-me-downs became a fight about everything wrong with the country. The thread split into factions. Some said nobody should have to depend on a stranger to keep their kids warm. Others said, if you can't afford children, you shouldn't have them. People dragged in personal responsibility, wages, rent, back in my day, and every grievance in between. My story became a mirror everyone turned to reflect their own fears. For a few seconds, my finger hovered over delete. Then I tapped Rosa's name instead. I shared a version of our story online, I typed. No last names, no photos. People are losing it. If you're uncomfortable at all, I'll take it down. Her reply came fast. Hey, I trust you. You didn't do anything wrong. If even one person ships one jacket because of what you wrote, it's worth it. People say ugly things. They've said them about me too. But comments never once kept the heat on. Neighbors did. Kind strangers did. Don't let the loud ones drown out the good. I sat there staring at her words. The comment section didn't save Lily. A shipping label did. A box did. A decision I almost talked myself out of making did. I left the post up. That, apparently, was the truly controversial choice. Next morning, a community blog reposted the story under some sugary headline about an $18 act of kindness. The arguments doubled underneath. This is what community looks like, one person wrote. This is emotional manipulation, another fired back. Stop glorifying charity and start asking why children are freezing in the richest country on earth. I read that line twice. It stung, not because it came from me, but because it named a truth I hate. It is messed up that some stranger's spare $18 is the difference between a kid shivering all winter and a kid in a warm coat. It should bother all of us. But then something happened that the headline didn't capture. People started replying to the angry comment. Okay, but kids still need coats now, someone wrote. Until everything changes, what do we do? Freeze while we argue? Another. I've got a size 4T jacket. I'll ship it if someone needs it. Another. We have extra snow boots. DM me. The fighting didn't vanish, but jammed between the shouting, strangers quietly built a tiny, messy digital village. Then came the private messages, one from a high school acquaintance I hadn't thought about in years. We've been struggling. I'm too embarrassed to post in those groups. Do you know any way to ask for kids' clothes without getting roasted in the replies? Another from someone I'd never met. I saw your post in a parenting group. I was the admin who turned down Rosa's request last year because it wasn't local only. I didn't connect the name until I read your story. It's been eating at me all day. I'm sorry. I was more worried about rules than people. That message made me cry harder than any of the praise. Because that was me too. The rule follower, the creature of convenience. The woman who almost let porch pickup only be the end of the story. My husband David found me wiping my face with the sleeve of my hoodie. Is this about the jam again? He asked, sinking onto the couch beside me. Yes, I sniffled. Also, I've apparently started a small civil war in the comments. He took my phone and scrolled for a while. People are wild, he said finally. You help somebody, and suddenly the whole internet wants to fight about whether you're fixing the world wrong. Am I? I asked. Am I making it worse by talking about it? He thought for a second. Look, we can't fix everything, can't rewrite policy or make rent cheaper by ourselves, but we can still do something small anyway. I'd rather our kids see us risk looking stupid than see us do nothing and complain. I rolled my eyes. That's pretty deep for a guy who just ate cold pizza over the sink. Put it in your next post, he said. Just spell my name right. That night, after everyone was asleep, I opened a note on my phone and typed, the $18 rule. Under it, I wrote, once a month, spend roughly that amount on someone outside your circle. No strings. Not because you're a hero, because someone once did the same for you, or might need to someday. I didn't post it. It felt too much like a dare I wasn't sure I could keep. The point wasn't a hashtag. The point was a habit. Life moved on. The post slid down the feed. People found new things to argue about. Rosa and I went back to trading texts about kid tantrums and broken appliances. Then, a few months later, my own world tilted. The company I worked for announced a restructuring. Sounded harmless, like rearranging furniture. It wasn't. In a single afternoon, my job was gone. 1 minute I was on back-to-back video calls. The next I was sitting in a small office with a box of tissues and a printed list of severance benefits. Driving home, my brain ran the kind of math that keeps you up at 3 in the morning. Mortgage, car payment, groceries, daycare. Severance would help for a while. Unemployment maybe. But for the first time, the floor under us didn't feel solid. That night, after the kids were asleep and David and I had our stunned, mechanical talk about spreadsheets and job boards, I opened my messages and stared at Rosa's name. I didn't want to text her. Didn't want it to feel like I was cashing in on her gratitude. But friendship that only flows one way isn't really friendship. Got laid off today, I typed. We'll be okay for a while, but I'm scared. Just needed to tell someone who knows what it's like to do math at the gas pump. Her reply was almost instant. Lauren, I'm so sorry. I know that feeling in my bones. Do you have enough for this month? For food? Please tell me yes. Yes, I wrote. For now. We have a small cushion. David still has his job. I'm just not used to being the one counting every dollar. Welcome to the club, she replied with a laughing, crying emoji. It's a terrible club, but you're not in it alone. A week later, a box showed up on my porch. This time, the crooked handwriting on top was my name. Inside, a bag of good coffee. The kind I never buy for myself. A small framed drawing, clearly by Lily. 3 stick figures labeled US with a huge red heart around them. And a note in Rosa's shaky handwriting. You saved us once. We can't pay your bills, but we can remind you you're not alone. You're allowed to receive, too. Love, R&L. At the bottom, a $20 grocery store gift card. My first instinct was to send it back. You need this more, I wanted to say. We're not that bad off. We still have a house. My car still runs. We're fine. We're fine. We're fine. That was pride talking. The same pride that stops people from posting their needs in community groups because they're afraid of getting torn apart in the replies. I looked at the gift card, then at the drawing. I remembered the photo of Lily in her red coat, grinning inside that freezing apartment. I remembered telling strangers that the point was never who deserves help more. It was about not letting each other drown while we argue about who's sinking correctly. I snapped a picture of the drawing and the coffee, not the gift card, and sent it to Rosa. Okay, I typed. I surrender. Thank you. I'll think of you when I buy ridiculously overpriced strawberries. You better, she shot back. Lily says get whipped cream too. I didn't post that story. Not because I was ashamed, but because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is let kindness stay small and unshareable. Not content, not a brand, just a quiet loop between two porches and two kitchen tables. But here's the part you might disagree with. I still think you should share your acts of kindness sometimes. Not as performance, not as a highlight reel of how generous you are, but because the internet is drowning in cruelty, scams, and people treating each other like enemies, if algorithms amplify what we feed them, maybe it's not the worst thing to toss in a few stories that smell like peach preserves and permanent marker. When we hide every good thing out of fear that someone will call it bragging, all that's left on display is the worst of us. So go ahead, argue with me. Tell me I'm naive. Tell me I'm giving people permission to be reckless with their trust or letting broken systems off the hook. I don't have a comeback big enough for everything you're worried about. I'm worried about it too. All I have is this. A little girl who slept in a red coat in a freezing apartment and now runs around a backyard her parents worked themselves raw to afford. A mom who almost hit delete instead of ship. A comment section that exploded with rage and still, somehow, organized 3 coat drives. A cardboard box that showed up on my porch the week I needed to be reminded that I'm not always the helper. Sometimes I'm the one who needs help. Be as careful as you need to be. Lock your doors, ask your questions, check things out. But when you feel that quiet nudge, the one that whispers, "What if she's telling the truth?" I hope you listen. Because maybe the real divide right now isn't between rich and poor, or city and country, or whatever labels show up on the evening news. Maybe it's between the people who walk past the box on their porch without opening it, and the ones who take a breath, grab the scissors and say, "Okay, let's see who I might be able to help today." Even if, in the end, they end up saving you too.